What do you do when your life still works but no longer feels like yours? Nothing has fallen apart. There is no great catastrophe. And from the outside, things may look quite good. You've built a great career, a fantastic business, you've got a beautiful family, a reputation or a life that everybody respects. Yet privately, something has shifted. The role that you once stepped into so willingly now feels like it's a little bit tight. Responsibilities you used to carry without question become heavier. And success still looks like success on paper, but it doesn't quite land the same way that it used to. And then you get that awkward question that arrives, which is, who am I if I no longer want to be the person that everyone knows me as? That is not ingratitude. It's not a midlife trauma. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to sell the house, leave the country, and start making pottery in a village somewhere around the world. Although, to be fair, I think I do actually like that appeal. It may simply mean that the identity which brought you this far has done its job, and your deeper self is actually asking for more room. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is how to recognize that moment, what it may be revealing, and how to let your life evolve without immediately taking a wrecking ball to everything that you've built to date. Welcome to The Art of Beautiful Thinking, the podcast where we explore the relationship you have with yourself and how that relationship shapes the life that you create. I'm Yvette, a metaphysical mentor, coach, and self-relationship teacher. And this is where timeless and metaphysical wisdom meets ordinary life, helping you know yourself more deeply and trusting your inner direction and consciously shaping what comes next. You see, most of us did not sit down at 18 with a cup of tea and consciously design an identity. And if you did, good on you. But normally, it's developed through life. And perhaps you've learned early that being useful really earned approval, yeah? And you may have also learned earlier on that competence created security, or staying calm kept the peace. Working harder produced results, and being the strong one meant other people could lean on you. And these qualities may have served you extraordinarily well. They could have helped you survive difficult circumstances or build financial security, raise a family, lead a team or create a business. And there's nothing wrong with being capable, responsible, or independent. The problem begins when a quality becomes a condition of belonging. And responsibility, for instance, turns into carrying what belongs to everyone else. And independence becomes an inability to receive help. High standards quietly become control. And gosh, I've lost count how many times I've done that. And then service slides into self-neglect, and achievement becomes the only evidence you'll accept that you matter. And eventually, you no longer are using the identity, you're actually performing it. And someone then offers to help you, and you hear yourself saying, no, it's fine. I'll do it. I'll do it all. Meanwhile, every part of you is thinking it is absolutely not fine. And I would quite like somebody to do it for me. And hearing that and distinguishing that really matters. The person you became may have been exactly who you needed to be. And that person deserves respect. But a version of you can be valuable and still be incomplete. I have a client that came to me around always feeling as if she had to be the capable one, that wonderful superwoman complex that a lot of women do actually have, that we have to take on absolutely everything. And my client always made herself available to do all of the school activities, said yes to absolutely everything, and would feel guilty if she didn't, okay? And she really just wanted to be liked, but inwardly just wanted to say no and only take on things that genuinely made a difference to her. But she felt that she had to take on absolutely everything. She had to be a success in her business, be a great mum, do all the kid activities, be there for her friends, and felt totally exhausted at the end of the day. But she would put everything and everyone else before her. And the biggest thing was she saw herself doing these things, and she kept giving herself a hard time about not pushing back and saying no. but she honestly did not know how to break the pattern of behavior on her own. And it wasn't until she did some deeper inquiry and came to the realization that you can't help others put on their own oxygen mask while you are gasping for air. Any of that sound familiar? See, success can make things harder. Failure gives us permission. It really does. It gives us permission to reconsider. As in, success doesn't do that. And if something is obviously broken, no one is surprised at all when you change it. But when the job pays well and the business is performing exceptionally and the family depends on you or your reputation has taken years to establish, questioning your direction can feel almost indecent. And you may wonder, what on earth have I got to complain about? Perhaps nothing. This isn't really the point. A misalignment isn't always a complaint about your circumstances. Sometimes it's the recognition that your outer life still reflects an earlier inner agreement. You agreed to be endlessly available, to say yes, to prove yourself, to keep everybody happy, to value security above freedom or recognition above meeting. And those agreements may never have been spoken, but your calendar knows about them. So does your workload. Your bank account, your relationships, and your body often know as well. The signals are usually quiet at first, less enthusiasm, more irritation, a sense of obligation, a reoccurring fantasy about doing life differently, like doing the pottery overseas somewhere. You may become very productive in an attempt to solve it. You go and book a holiday, for instance, or, you buy a beautiful notebook thinking that I'm going to put all of my personal growth stuff in there. For approximately 3 days, that notebook is expected to carry the full burden of your personal transformation. But the question still comes back. And it comes back because success and alignment are not the same thing. A life can continue to function long after it has actually stopped expressing the person who is living it. So here is the distinction I want to introduce today, because we will explore it much more deeply in future episodes. The roles you perform are real, but they are not the whole of you. Founder, parent, leader, expert, partner, carer. Each identity gives shape to the way you move through the world. It carries habits, responsibilities, and expectations, and it may also express something deeply true. Things like courage, devotion, creativity, wisdom, or service. Still, the role is only a form. It is not your deepest source. Within the art of beautiful thinking, I understand the authentic self as the individual expression of infinite intelligence, the deeper creative intelligence within life and within you. And we will unpack that properly in the next episode. But for now, let's hold this thought. No identity, however successful, can contain the whole of who you are. That is why a role can remain impressive, yet still become too small. You can still feel really tight in it. Your deeper nature is not necessarily rejecting the life that you actually built. It may simply be asking for more room within it. Like for one person, this transition arrives when the children need her differently and she realizes she has no idea what she wants for herself. And for another, it comes after reaching the senior role that they've worked towards for years, and the title is still really credible and the work has just simply lost its life. The strong one may discover that strength has become a barrier, to intimacy, or the achiever notices that each goal produces less satisfaction. But the different circumstances all have the same underlying tension. So an identity that once created meaning no longer gives the deeper self enough room to move. And that was an experience that I had within a health business that I ran for about 9 years. And when I started that business, I absolutely loved it. I was totally passionate about it. I was passionate about health. I really wanted to assist people to, gain vitality in their life. But as time went on, I just started to lose that passion and that drive for it. And I was thinking to myself, is this what I want to continue doing? I don't know if it is. But then I would feel guilty every time I thought that. And I thought to myself, I'm just starting to really resent this business. And I thought, well, okay, let's go get some coaching on this so I can gain more clarity around it. And what I realized through that coaching, when I did that deeper inquiry, was that I'd actually outgrown the business. And it didn't require a pivot in my instance. Sometimes when you're in business and things start to feel a bit different and you start to think, I need to pivot, but it wasn't that. It needed something deeper. I'd actually outgrown it. And so it was time to move on. And then what I decided to do after that was to move into the corporate arena for a couple of years whilst I figured out what it was that I wanted to do next in my entrepreneurial career. But the thing was I had that deeper inquiry. So for business owners, for example, it becomes particularly visible because a business tends to preserve the identity of the person who originally built it, like in the early years. Saying yes to, it could be saying yes to every client. May have been really sensible at the time because you needed more money to come in. And when you're in that early foundational thing, you usually will find yourself saying yes to a lot, or being constantly available to establish trust, and then doing everything yourself and kept the costs down as well. But then the business grows around those habits and you have a hard time letting those habits go. And then you still find that your clients still expect that direct access to you as that business is growing. The people working for you are waiting for your approval before they absolutely do anything. And every complicated issue makes its way back to you without somebody else stepping in to intervene, to take it, to resolve it. Everything comes back to you. And the revenue can increase, but your freedom disappears. And eventually, the business may be a success, and it could be an extremely successful expression of who you were when you founded the business, but it's no longer who you are now because you've outgrown it. And you've outgrown it because you've grown and evolved as a person. Now, for instance, the woman who built it needed to prove that she was capable. The woman leading it now may want depth, freedom, contribution, or legacy. But perhaps she wants to mentor rather than manage. Maybe she wants fewer clients and more creative work, or a life in which the business matters without consuming her whole identity. Now, this doesn't automatically mean that the business is wrong. Like I found in my health business, it was definitely not wrong. It was just I simply had outgrown it. It just may simply be organised around an outdated inner agreement that you had with yourself. And that's why another strategy will not always solve the problem. New systems can be installed while that old identity that you have still quietly remains in charge. And we will return to this in a future episode because a business offers one of the clearest examples of an old identity continuing to organise an outer life. And once you realise an old identity no longer fits, dramatic action can be terribly, terribly seductive. You want to quit, you want to sell, you want to leave, you want to move, you want to start again. But sometimes a substantial change is right. Like in my instance, it was about moving on. But evolution doesn't always require demolition. So before rearranging the entire furniture of your life, ask whether the deeper change is in how you participate. The business might need genuine delegation, or your career could evolve towards teaching or contribution. The person who carries everything may need to return to fewer responsibilities and handing those responsibilities over to their rightful owners. But perhaps the next step is a boundary and not a bonfire. So the authentic self provides direction. Your conscious mind and functional ego help to organise that direction in real life. We do need both. But the inner connection without action becomes avoidance. And action without inner connection becomes striving. The work is really about bringing them both into accord. So at this stage, you don't need to decide whether every uncomfortable feeling that you're having is intuition, exhaustion, fear, or a message from the universe. That's far too much pressure to put on yourself on any given afternoon. But begin with recognition. Notice what has become rigid and pay attention to the roles you keep performing after their meaning has changed. Observe the difference between temporary frustration and a truth that repeatedly returns. Because discernment comes next. And we will give it proper attention, later on. But recognition is what we're after today. Recognition is enough. So take a moment and name the identity currently organising your life. For instance, the founder, the expert, the carer, the achiever, the provider, the peacemaker, the strong one. And first acknowledge what it gave you, perhaps security, belonging, confidence, resilience, or success. But then consider the cost. Where has that role become rigid? Which behaviours feel compulsory rather than true? And what do people still expect because you've always supplied it? Look at the physical evidence. Your calendar is often more honest than your intentions are. What do your workloads, boundaries, relationships, and plans reveal about the identity that's still in charge? Now ask, what am I frightened I might lose if I change? Is approval, income, status, belonging, the feeling of being needed? And finally, what part of me is asking for more room? Now choose one action that honours that answer. You don't need to build a new way of being through declaration alone. You're going to embody it through participation. So you don't need to reject the person who brought you here. That's not what we're after. You just may need to be brave, resourceful, loving, and exceptionally capable. Honour what you have built and then let yourself evolve. And gratitude for the past doesn't require permanent loyalty to its limitations. Not at all. Just be grateful for the experience. But the better question isn't, how do I escape this life? It is, how can the life that I've created evolve to reflect who I am becoming? And in the next episode, we're going to go beneath the roles to ask a more confronting question. And that is, who are you without the identity everyone knows you for? And if today's episode has helped you recognize something in yourself, the Authentic Life Blueprint workbook gives you a structured place to begin unpacking the beliefs, the patterns, values, and the choices shaping your life. And if this has brought an immediate decision or transition into focus and you would value individual insight, you can also book a clarity reset session with me and we'll step back from the noise, explore what is happening beneath the surface, and identify the clearest next step available to you. So the blueprint offers that structured self-guidance, and the clarity reset offers focused one-to-one support when clarity feels difficult to reach alone. And you'll find the links to both of them in our episode description. So thank you for joining me. I love you guys. And remember to think beautifully and live brilliantly. Ciao for now. We'd like to say a huge thank you to our incredible audience for your continued support. Our mission is to ignite your spark, empowering you to be a beacon of light for others. We'd love to hear from you. So if you've got any questions that you would like answered in future episodes or just want to share some insights, connect with us on our Facebook community page. If you're looking for additional resources, go to our website. You'll find the link below. And remember, the absolute best way to help us grow is to share this episode with your friends and family and to subscribe to the Art of Beautiful Thinking podcast. So until next time, think beautifully and live brilliantly.